Oh, we were honored to be part of that celebration. That was a highlight and just great to see everybody. Anyway, I get a chance to introduce Teresa, of course, and in my opinion, she's saying hello to everybody. Anyway, one of the best teachers I've ever met in the business is T. She's amazing. She can make things simple, make you want to do things. We're here today just to do some teaching. As with any time, always check up line, but we're going to keep this really generic and simple tonight. But I think a lot of the principles are universal. A lot we've learned from Jody and Kathy in our upline, of course. But honored to be here. T, all you, and looking forward to listening to you. Here's T.
Thank you, baby.
You bet.
All right. Wow. Well, I was trying not to have the ugly girl cry back there. How many of you had the ugly person cry? That was amazing. That was like, wow, that's really what it's about, you know, making a difference here while we're all on this earth and just making an impact. And how many of you want to live out this life healthy, wealthy, and wise? You know, so I look at Jody and Kathy Victor. You know, we have a saying in this business to finish well, and they have a lot more life to live. But boy, are they sure amazing as far as all of those. You know, I see them and they look younger than ever. Every time I see them, you know, they're healthy, they're wealthy, and boy, are they wise. And let's give them a hand again for the legacy that they've left all of us and what they bring to us. Just truly tremendous. And really having a great time talking to all the leaders back there, you know, so I'm like, how long you been in the business? 40 years? How long you been in the business? 30 something years? You know, so how many of you feel like you're just getting started? You know, when you think about this business, what's so great is tomorrow is a new day. Monday, 2017, October 30th. Can be the day that you made that decision to move forward and make a legacy impact for the rest of your life. And we are so excited for all of you. I want to dream build a little bit with you on your journey and what's at hand and, you know, the things that you'll accomplish along the way. How many of you debt free already or looking forward to being debt free? You know? Yeah. And you think about the kids today going to college. My two boys are looking at that college, you know, going, wow, that's a lot of money, Mom and Dad. We don't want to really go. We don't want to spend 4 more years. We just feel like we can get educated in the business. And so we leave that up to them. But we know that whether you get educated, whether you're not in this business, the wealth of education, you know, paying off that college debt was my first big thing. I didn't have a lot like Howie did. My parents paid for my college. But I remember every year was about 40 grand for them to, oh, no, actually, but my years, because I did financial aid and I was an RA and got through college, tried my best. It was a private college out in California. But I remember that feeling of when my brother challenged me about that I was broke, you know, when I was kind of being skeptical and negative. It was the first time I committed to paper how much debt I had. And I would challenge all of you, if you haven't done a budget session with yourself, to write down your what's coming in, what's going out, what's in your savings, and what's your debt. Because until you look at the debt on paper, you're realizing I'm truly still broke and I'm living at home and not paying rent. So getting debt free, that first feeling of getting, you know, paying off my college loan. I remember there was a situation that I had all my tickets going to a major function. I got tickets for my group. It was a fraudulent agency and it was $14,000 worth of tickets. And I had to buy new tickets for my group because, you know, they gave me the money and the agency was not existing and took all the money. And I remember thinking, gosh, cash flow, you know. I remember my dad saying, T, here's 10 grand and I know you'll be good for it. And sure enough, got to pay him off right away with the next bonus. How many of you want cash flow like that? Where you have a emergency and you know that you can pay it off because the income in this business. You know, I remember that car payment, my GMAC car loan going down, and I could have sent it in, my last payment for my car. I didn't have a stereo, couldn't afford that when I wasn't in the business. But I remember taking it down to the GMAC dealership and having them stamp paid in full. And having that feeling, that was when I was completely debt free. And so that feeling when you owe no man, no money, the monkey off your back, that financial burden, how many of you excited for that? You know, and as you build your business and create that foundation that we talk about, Premier and Double Premier, you know, it is the lives you're being changed, but it is also the financial security you're providing for yourself. to live in dignity, to not owe anybody money, to be able to come up with, what you need if family members need it. Many of you know, and I'll bring the story up because it's just an example of what the cash flow in this business. So many of you know, some of you weren't around, but when the fire happened and we lost everything 5 years ago, we've been financially independent for a long time. So putting away cash, we've always learned to live below our means. How he was able to gather my kids around. Another great lesson about creating wealth is to be generous on every occasion. Whatever you give will come back. Whether you give time, time will come back to you. Money will come back to you. But he was able to gather the kids around and say, Isaiah gave Elisha, Mom, whatever you hear in your school, they used to go to this homeschool school, anybody at church, if anybody's being affected by the fire, I'm going to give Mom $25,000 and let's just give it out to the community. And so we lost our house, but we were able to sow, and we found a lady at our church who lost everything and didn't have insurance. And so we were able to go to our church, the director, and say, here's $10,000. Don't tell her, just make it anonymous, but just bless her. And so we got a letter back from her, and I got to meet the lady. I didn't tell her it was from us. I just didn't want her to know, but she was weeping and sobbing and crying and super like that ugly girl cry. She was just a mess. And I too was, sad, but not like that, not devastated like that. And then she was like, I'm trying to comfort her at church. And she goes, I lost everything. And I go, yeah, we lost our house too. And she looks at me, she goes, how come you look so good? And I was thinking, I look good because I have security. It's called peace of mind. We're not in the situation because we built our business. And I didn't say that to her, but I said, cause God's with us, you'll be okay. But remember, like for you, don't think you have a lot of options. I know sometimes you think, well, we're comfortable. There'll be a time that you're going to need to have the excess to take care of whatever you need. And I'm so proud of Gary as a man that he's taken such good care of his wife. So awesome. All of you men in here, give yourselves a hand. We're so proud of you guys because truly, for Howie, Jody, all the guys and the wives, we do a lot too, but it's having a vision for your family that's bigger than yourself to create financial security. Because money does buy you time. Money does buy you choices. And so, getting debt free is awesome, but it's having that extra, when you, like my sister, okay? So I was single. I had the stuff, car, whatever, I got my Porsche and all that fun stuff. I call it the fluff and the stuff. And never get confused with I call it the motivation versus the motive. And so I'll just tell you a little story that helped me because when I got in this business, I had a challenge with dream building and stuff. And I was like, I didn't know how to deal with the stuff and the fluff. So I remember, I was reading a story and it really ministered to me about David and Goliath. So hopefully this can help you. So David was motivated, by the giant, right? Wanting to kill the giant and went around singing, he's going to do the giant. And then all of a sudden the king offered land, no taxes, and the daughter of his choice for a wife. And David did it that day. He killed the giant. He got motivated, And so I talk about the motivation was the stuff and the fluff, but the motive was to show that God could slay this giant. And so the motive of your heart, most people don't know, the motive, what drives you, what makes you cry, what makes you guys go ugh, what makes you get up in the morning and, set your goals and do it again. The motivation is the cars and the stuff. And that's going to come. It's built into this lifestyle. It's so incredible to have that extra, that we can live a life of luxury on earth, but to know that the motive is making a difference in people's lives every day. And so for me, just having that extra stuff, I remember looking at my sister's car and she had a broken, it was kind of bent Nissan Little Sentra. And she had to drive kids to school from her park. She was a park director. And so one day I said, I'm going to buy you a car. You got to get something safer than that. You're putting some kids in the car. She goes, no, you can't buy me a car. I go, yeah, I can buy you a car. So we went down to the car dealership. I go, just pick whatever you want. And so she wanted this Ford Explorer. It was cream with a little pink strip. And, I'm like, hey, let's go. Just don't make it like we're going to buy it, but we're going to buy it. But don't make like you're super excited with the dealer, okay? So so she's driving the car and the dealer's there and he goes, you like it? She's like, mm-hmm. And he goes, so what do you think? She's like, mm-hmm. Like, but she loves the car, She was like, yeah, mm-hmm, I like it. And so we get out of the car and I tell the guy, what's the payment? It was $23,000 and I wrote a check and I said, here, I love you. Drive a safe car. Got to give her a car and bless her with that, and then so my daddy goes, what about me? I'm like, okay, daddy, what do you need? So I gave him some money for a Cadillac. He upgraded his car. And just 3 Christmases ago, we were sitting around the table and he still had that Cadillac that he got from years. And then Howie goes, Papa, you need a new car. And he goes, my dad is so funny. He's old school. He saves every penny. He budgets it every dime. And so he goes, no, Howie, okay. And so Howie gives me a blank check and he goes, T, go shopping. And so my dad and I went to 5 different dealerships and we shopped and he goes, oh, Teresa can shop. She's like, Daddy, come on, let's go to the next one. He goes, let's go, Dad, find out what you like. So wanted another Cadillac. And then he goes, you know what? The Lexus is really nice. And I said, then let's get the Lexus. He goes, no, but that one's more. That's okay, Daddy. He goes, no, but it's more. And I go, Daddy, that's why we do this business. So we can get you what you want. My dad's my hero. And so I can bless him like that. And so we wrote a check, $38,000. I got him a new Lexus. And so and those are fluff and stuff, but what a joy it is to be able to give. So one of the principles of success is remember that. Give your time by showing people the plan. Drive the miles. Go pay the price. Because when you sow that time, you'll get it back. Don't worry what comes out. Remember, you're the waterer. You're the planter. It's God who brings the increase. All you have to do is sow seed, sow abundantly. Give it away. Bless people. And watch what happens as a result of you just going out there with the right motive. And so for me, buying cars, homes, all that fun stuff, for those of you girls that love to decorate, the way that it works for me, I'm not that detailed, but for me, it's a picture. So if you ever went to Houzz magazine, HOUZZ, you can check out the website. It's super cool. And so I get pictures, and so when we bought the Florida house, we went down there after a cruise. We were good friends with our friends down there and we were like, this is the crazy things you do with extra cash. Let's buy a house in Florida. Why? Because our best friends live here. We want to be close to them. How many of you have family that you want to be close to? Kids that maybe live out of state and you just want to be close to them. So let's get a place. So we go shopping for a house. That was kind of ridiculous. So we went around Celebration Disney, where Disney built, and we looked at all these houses and then we found one, this beautiful 4,000 square foot house. And I remember when we purchased it, I took out my file folder of all my pictures and we went down there to decorate, and I told the painter and the guy, I said, make it look like this photo. And so he goes, okay, and he's looking at chocolate espresso walls, and then I told my girlfriends, I want to find these color linens, white with coral accent, that red coral. And so we made those rooms like the picture, and then when people walk in, they go, wow, this is gorgeous. Who did it? Who decorated? Do you have a designer? I go, yep, Houzz.com. Look at these. These all look. So your life becomes a picture. So here's my question to you. What pictures do you have in your folder? What pictures do you have on your dream board? What are you looking at that is stirring that creative side in you that all of a sudden when you see it, or you've been planning for that day? Maybe for me, one of my next dreams is my kid's wedding. I have it all written down. of course they got to pick their spouse first and get married, So I remember my little son, because I'm such a dream board person, because the pictures help me to think creatively. One day he was really little, and he's looking through magazines. We're making their dream board. And he goes, Mom, can you help me pick a wife? And he was like 7 or 8. I'm like, okay. Looking through the magazine, I'm like, do you think you're going to want a blonde or a brunette? And he goes, I guess, I don't know, Mommy, you pick her. Because if you pick her, she'll be beautiful. And so I was like, oh, I didn't know what to pick. So I go, let's do that one later. He goes, well, then find me a ring like Daddy got you. So we picked out some diamond rings. So those are fun times that I remember, dream building. In this business, that's what you're allowed to do. You can dream and plan for your future. So I pray that you become the greatest dreamer in your business, in your family. So dream big. So you start to do the things like, the things you would write down. I have this planner that I saved from the fire. It was so great. But I would write crazy things down. Like when I was single living in Hawaii, I wrote to buy a house where it snows. What was I thinking? So ended up, of course, living in Colorado, right? Where right now we're getting our first snowfall, which is beautiful. But I'm from the island. So cold to me is like 60, like, oh no, it's getting cold. And the kids are like, Mommy, you're so cold. And I've lived in Colorado for 20 years, but there's nothing like 82 degrees, trade winds, and warm weather. So for those of you, traveling, living in different places, that's some of the luxuries you'll be able to do. I love how he says about this. He says, people always think when we go back home, they go, we don't want to bother you guys because you guys are on vacation, right? Or we don't want to bother you guys when you're at Peter Island because you're on vacation. And then Howie's line is this. He goes, oh no, we're not on vacation. He goes, financially independent people go where they want to go when they want to go. Job people go on vacation. So how many of you, right, want to go where you want to go when you want to go and stay as long as you want to stay because you created financial independence. So traveling for those of you might be a hot button. So I want to share with you some of the trips that you'll go on as achievers. So how does it work with Amway? So you qualify platinum 12 out of 12. And right now, this week, you'll get your call from the corporation. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. We'd like to book your travels to Achievers. What day would you like to leave? And then you give them your dates and time. When would you like to return? If you want to stay extra, they schedule that and say, fantastic. So you'll be getting your box. And your Achievers box comes in. It's usually a beautiful package box. And it really is first class, even to the level of NAGC, except NAGC or Diamond Club is just somewhere more exotic. But Achievers is just as incredible. Every amenity, every detail. Your box comes with special luggage tags. And I don't know, man, they must know we love to shop because they give you 8 luggage tags. Like, come on. But, okay, I'll take them. And so the luggage tags comes, your itinerary, always some fun little stuff, and always some kind of little gift. Maybe a phone charger or whatever you might be extra needing in your little box. And then you arrive to your Achievers trip. So this year is San Diego. And it's always during December. Next year will be November. And next year we're going to Nashville, Tennessee. What's in Nashville? Country singers. No, I don't know. But we all haven't been to Nashville. So it'll be in Nashville, Tennessee. And then the following year, we'll go to Disney World. How many of you want to join us for Achievers, Disney World, or San Diego, wherever it will be, right? And it's an all-expense 5-day, 4-night trip. And they stay at the best hotels. Some of the hotels, when you go there, like when you go to Disney World, it'll be at the Disney Swan and Dolphin. And on the back of the door, it always has the rate of the room. And about $600 to $900 a night. How's that? And they're paying all expenses paid. And how Amway does it is because they want you to be wowed, like wow. They will send you, you go up to your room, you don't check your bags, they pull your luggage for you, you get up to your room, you go down and get all your amenities. And believe me, bring an extra suitcase because they load you up with so many gifts that you have to bring an extra suitcase. But every night in your room, they have a special gift for you. So the night that we were in Orlando. They had a special thing. They're going to do it next year. You can bring 2 kids, all expenses paid. Normally, it's just you and your wife or each other. And then your kids, you can do a buy-in. But this year, they wanted to bring your kids. And if you could do grandkids, too. And so they paid for 2 kids. And so couples were like, oh, you brought your kids. They paid for it. Well, we don't have kids yet. And the couples who had kids that were paid for, like, well, we have kids, so they're here. And so the couples that didn't have kids went back to their room. Then they came running back down, like, you guys better go make kids. Okay, So the couples without kids went running back up to their room. And then they came running back down, right? Well, I don't know for that, but they left. But they came running back down, and they were like, check this out. Because we don't have kids, Amway gave us $1,000 so that we could just spend it on ourselves because we don't have kids. And the couples with kids were like, oh, we have kids. So how generous a company to do that. They don't need to give the couples without kids money. And then, what's so cute is how detailed. Okay, this is how detailed. Think of all the thousands of couples that are there. If you had 1 kid, they gave you $500. So the one with 1 kid goes, yeah, we got $500. The ones with a lot of kids, they went, oh. But when you think about that type of detail and generosity, it goes beyond what you're expecting. The gifts in your room, the things, and they want you to have exclusive things. Like, so they'll do this, right? They'll close out MGM Studio. And when we say close it out, it's just for all of us achievers. So they open the doors, they get us all there. And if you're the first timer, we always know this happens to you because you're hungry. So you get into the park, and what you're not aware of is that every restaurant, every food, every kiosk through the whole park is open for you. But they always have food right away, so buffets. So all the first timers are scarfing their face at the buffet. Little do they know everything else is open. So we're always teaching our group, pace yourself. Pace yourself. Believe me. So we see that first group eat all the food, and then they're walking through, and there's the pizza shop open, the Italian restaurant, there's the jambalaya open, and they're like, oh, shucks. So they go throw up and come. No, just kidding. No. But it's so incredible. Literally, you guys, it is where, even though you have money, it's something about getting everything for free. So you see all these multi-millionaire diamonds going to the churros stand and going, I'll have 4 churros. 4? Okay, 4. And they walk out going, with their churros, like it's not like, okay, because everything is free for everybody. And you ride unlimited rides. You go to all the restaurants, and it's just for us at Achievers. And this past year, they did it twice. They opened Islands of Adventure and MGM and closed down the whole park just for you, just for me, for building our business to the platinum level. How many of you want to join us for that? So what will they do for us at Achievers in Nashville? Who knows? But you guys got to come, because those are the memories. And the best part is you're running around with your group. You're running around the people who got you there. It's just so awesome. So Achievers are there. Of course, Diamond Club, NAGC, all those trips. But here's what I want you to remember. For building a business, every year you go on these trips. It's not just like once in a lifetime. It is really every year, we're going back to Australia next year. We're going off to Diamond Club again. And right around this time is when all the bonuses kick in too. October, November, all the annual bonuses kick in. You have your monthly. So all the Achievers right now are getting their $15,000 or $20,000 bonus check on top of their performance bonus. So we've gotten calls, hey, we got a $30,000 month. Hey, we're having a $25,000 month. Hey, we're getting a $30,000 month. How many of you would love, as a platinum, to have a $30,000 month? And imagine if you're debt-free by then. And what do you do with it? What would you do with it? What would you do with that extra income for Christmas this year? How would you spend your money? How would you spend your time? And so from the traveling to the amenities to the beauty, I'm going to end with a few things that I have learned along this journey as far as what makes a business grow quick. Okay. These are just some leadership principles that I want to cover and share with you. So with leadership, when you're thinking about it, okay, I wrote qualities of a leader, and don't feel like you have to change this all at once. When you think about all the leaders that you guys run with, they're all of this, okay? But number one, somebody who's friendly, approachable, okay? A smile. You guys have heard that, right? Somebody that you know that you can go to and say, talk to. You want to make sure you're that to people, okay? Number two, dress. You know, I think, like how he's saying, a cut above. And I know in every state, there's great places you can go to, even if you don't got a lot of money, you're on a budget, you're trying to get out of debt, go to Goodwill, go to consignment stores, get something that looks like you can teach people how to make money, and spend the money if you need to tailor it. Because of, you know that young guy who gets that first suit, that he looks like he's big walking in that suit. So just crisp it up a bit. You know, watch your hygiene, ladies, makeup. Don't have to wear a lot, but make sure you look like you run a business that has beauty, right? Okay, number three, predictable. Emotionally stable. Not that, here's the important thing, not that you can't be emotional, but just learn how to be stable once you figure out where you're at. Because everybody has stuff that goes on. What is the secret for me when I got super emotional, angry, mad, discouraged, worried? I took my eyes off that situation and I focused on somebody else more worried than me, more discouraged than me. There's got to be somebody else dealing with the worst situation. And every time I would go out there, I'd feel so much better. And in fact, many of you will feel this way, listening to your rallies, sitting down with a couple across the table. You'll look at each other, go, God, they really have issues. We're really happy. You'll feel so much better because you realize a lot of times people are going through some stuff. So take your eyes off yourself, put it on other people. Number four, be proactive, not reactive. Number five, kindness, graciousness, willingness to get out. I'll go through this quick. Willingness to get out of your comfort zone. And one thing, to be a worker, to not be lazy. Married couples, you're already stuck with each other, but single people, make sure when you're getting engaged, marry a worker. If you marry somebody still playing Xbox, that's a bad sign. People can change, but make sure you have somebody that really is able to get out the door, go work. If they don't have a job, find a job, work. Everybody can find work if they really wanted to work. And then be good at merchandising, retailing, sense of humor, big dreamer, great edifier. So I want to bring Howie up. And, for Howie and I being here this weekend, you guys have touched our hearts so much. And I'm still crying, Gary. You guys just messed me up. Your kids, what a beautiful story. Thank you so much. They're so awesome. But I look at our journey for Howie and I, and just our life together is such a blessing to be, for you now mentored by Jody and Kathy, for myself too, having Jody and Kathy in our lives, the legacy that they've created and the lifestyle. And they're so generous too. It's just ridiculous. I love this about being with them. When I'm with them, every time I'm with them, I cry. Not because I'm emotional. I do get emotional, but because I'm overwhelmed. Like we go into Peter Island and, Howie and I are running late. So they send this yacht for us. Yeah, remember that yacht? 82-foot yacht. It's like 10 p.m. at night. And these guys are there and they're like, Howie and T, we want to make sure you guys are taken care of. So this yacht comes in and it's just for he and I. And we're like, this is Jody and Kathy. They want to make sure you guys are in safe. So we sit on the back of the yacht and we're cruising in under the moonlight and that mist is hitting us. And I'm just like crying there. And then we get to the place and they put us on this other yacht. I'm crying there. We go to New York and Kathy orders this seafood tower with lobster tails coming out. I'm looking at, crying there. So, thank you, Jody and Kathy. To all of you, we can't wait to see you hopefully sooner than later at Achievers Diamond Club. We love you guys. Here's Howie.
Okay.
Okay. I think I got the right one. Okay, good. Wow. That was pretty incredible. She can dream build, man. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? So it's fun. You know what? Healthy groups like to laugh. You know what? When you can laugh and cry all within a half an hour, I think that's a good thing, right? So you guys are blessed. But I want to do a little teaching today and obviously just to encourage you, because I think and I appreciate being able to hang out and just visit with a lot of you. But the message always should be, in my opinion, from, people that have gone and just been around a while, is that you can do it. Of course you can do it. Okay. And a lot of us, at least for me, I mean, you think about going to school for all that time and all the different things, and then just the path change, just basically the power of, I always say 1 or 2 powerful relationships in your life can change your life, and I think about when I met Terry Felber, who I've mentioned as my mentor all those years ago. And then obviously Teresa was another powerful, relationship. Ron Prier, Jody and Kathy have been that to me. Bill Hawkins. I can go on and on and on about all the powerful relationships that have really impacted, who I am today. And I'm grateful for that. And I think the other thing that I've observed over, and I think a lot of you probably understand this, is, just not forgetting where you came from, not reading your own press clippings. And I think all of us probably get edified more than we probably should. And, we really are pretty normal people. We twitch once in a while, but we're pretty normal. And some of you probably heard my audio where I used to juggle on the subway to make sure I didn't get mugged and stuff like that. But it really is fun to be here. But let's just talk a little bit about, just some things that I think will help you move on, regardless of where you're at. If you've been in the business, 10 years, you've been in the business 10 days, it doesn't matter. Again, I think I mentioned earlier, and I've watched Jody and Kathy do this in the boardroom as well, is we always want to make sure that a new IBO can, in other words, it doesn't matter if, let's say, one of your diamonds can do it, but if a brand new person should be able to get it. In other words, we want to keep things so simple and duplicatable. And as I was reading through, a lot of the MMP awards and recognition, and just what an awesome thing you guys have and the way it's been put together. And Steve and Joe, I know, are implementing that and doing a lot of that. But we want it to be where anybody who gets in can do it. You think about Fast Track and how simple that is. Hey, that's $3 $50 checks sitting out there for people, and just all the different things that have happened and what's coming on the horizon is exciting. You have a mobile global business, and when you really think about, we were in New York City several times for some board meetings, and many of you have seen what's happened with Uber and Lyft. Some of you probably drive an Uber and Lyft on the side. A lot of people are doing that. And, of course, the impact, or the disruptor is the word they use, with the taxi business, right? Think about how iTunes, right, affected, most of you, well, maybe some of you here, but friends, I remember my kids, they're fairly sharp. When the first time they saw a turntable, they go, "What's that?" Or they saw a cord on a phone, thought something was wrong with it, right? And when you think about it, with the business opportunity in 2019 being 60 years old, right? That is amazing. We've never had a disruptor. You follow me? And you think about all these different things. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing when you think about it. So where you are in time is an important thing to understand, right? Right place, right time, right people. And so I don't need to spend much time on the dream. You just had, one of the best dream builders in my life that I've ever seen. I remember when I first met T. We met, of course, in 96, you heard that story. And then we courted for about, 10 months, about 6 weeks short of a year. And then we were married. We got married on May 1st, 97. And, I remember when I first walked into her home and we were with the family and everything, I looked up and she had a dream board about the size of that side of the stage. And I didn't know whether I should be worried, scared, should I still marry her? And I was a diamond. So, it's sort of fun. That she's been able to do that. I appreciate that. One of the cool parts for those of you that are married is you learn how to complete each other. You learn how to, I appreciate T because she fills in my gaps, which I really, really appreciate. And so it's so fun to watch her do that. And we've had some funny times because we're a good example of a couple that, 2 totally different personalities. I'm a choleric driver type and of course, and that kind of thing. And then she's a full on sanguine. And we've had our moments, right? I think I said to some of you, we've had our chipmunk in a bag moments too, kind of stuff. But we love each other and we always come back to the fact that, it's one of those things where you got to work stuff out. I don't know if I said this, but last night, but if you're a couple and you're working together, look, if you don't butt heads once in a while, I think you're weird or you're lying. Okay. So raising kids. And so just learn to get through it. Learn to say you're sorry. That's a big one. Because one of the greatest joys you'll have in your life is relationships. And sometimes some of the greatest challenges you can have sometimes is relationships. But certainly for those of you that are married in here, just love each other, forgive each other, move on from the past. Doesn't do much to keep talking about it. And so we're grateful that we've worked through stuff over the years. because now it's been a smooth ride. So obviously goals, you all saw the board that was drawn back there. In fact, I took some notes right off of that. And when you start to look at, goals, and I've always heard Jody say, I love this. He says, goals are your perspiration. Your dream is your inspiration, right? So as we talk Premier, double Premier, let's get the, I think all of you understand the 653 and the parameters, and it's all laid out there for you. And that really what I wanted to say today is for all of you, I think the first goal before your next major function, there's no reason why a lot of you couldn't go put together, really all of you could go put a good premier foundational business together. I think I was talking to some of you last night afterwards, and, we've been blessed and our home is really fun. But I remember when we were doing the 6,000 square foot addition with the kitchen stadium and all that stuff, the foundation of it wasn't pretty, right? The foundation, muddy, icky, snow kind of stuff. And now, obviously, it's beautiful. And so, Brad Duncan's given some great talks on foundation. I've heard Jody talk all about that, that whole Ruby to Diamond concept. And a lot of you, I know you guys are really teaching that. And Ruby's a big deal. It's a good foundation. But your first foundation, if you're new, is to go set a goal to put a premier business together. Certainly in the next 60, 90, 120 days, it's very doable. I've seen people put, our correlation to that being an eagle in our LOA, and I've seen people put it together solid in about 90 days with some work, and we'll talk about that. But understand that. So definitely setting some goals out of here. I mean, another one you could set is, obviously, what do you need? The habits you want to develop, right? Your daily habits will obviously dictate your future. You all understand that. So good audio habits, right? And good book reading habits. I always tell people, and I think everybody would agree what the leadership here would say, is that people skill books are the ones that I would get into. There's a lot of great books, whatever ones are in your system that you're using. But ultimately, my observation of all these years is really what happens is, because, I've heard, my mentors always taught me it's one thing to build it. It's another thing to go out and hold it together, right? And that's probably the thing that a lot of us get excited about. I'm just grateful that for whatever reason we were able to hold it together all these years and watch it grow. We've never had a down year. We've never had to cut back on our lifestyle. I've been fortunate. The original Diamond Ship that I built in 3 years, I've never had to rebuild again. I'm grateful because I was taught to build it right and get the foundation and go drive depth and all that different stuff that I know you learn. But all of you can go set that goal of even just going out. How about number of people you want to connect with? Quality conversations, whatever you guys call it, obviously, but going out and making some connections, fumbling around a little bit. Sometimes people call, well, I went out and talked to 2 or 3 people, and I'm always proud. One of the things I've always done is if I'm connected with anybody, whatever your media of doing that is I always compliment the littlest things. And I appreciate people that'll get out of their comfort zone because I'll just be candid. I wasn't very good at out contacting people necessarily. In fact, I just really was never my strength. I'm sort of shy, to be honest. I don't like to necessarily always be by myself, but I mean, it was hard for me sometimes to go out and talk to people. So I had to learn that skill. The one thing I did get good at, which I think I talked about a little bit last night, is Terry Felber always taught me to get into people's sphere of influence. So the one thing I did as I got people sponsored in the business, and I think this is important because we talked last night at the Night Owl, everybody knows you go sponsor someone in the business. They know 50 to 100 people that you don't know. And I think that's an area where a lot of you probably have some, great people that you've probably sponsored that probably have a sphere of influence. Everybody knows a diamond somewhere, right? And a lot of times it's just a matter of doing that. And so anyway, so obviously another goal you can set is contacts you want to make and things like that. So there's some simple habits that I think you can do. And one of the things that I always talk about pretty much every night after my meetings is managing 3 things: time management, money management, and your mindset. And your mindset's coming through, again, doing your steps and plugging into the system and all that. But at some point in time, you got to learn how to manage your time. And I think that's another, big tip that I would recommend for a lot of you. What I used to do, I'll just say what I used to do. I used to sit down every weekend and I would write out Sunday through Saturday and I would go AM, midday, PM, and I would X off all the time where there's no way I could build the business. I couldn't go build plan B because I was stuck in plan A. And then obviously I learned to put things aside. Like I used to play on 3 softball teams, and I'm not telling you to quit softball. You got to do what you need to do, but it just wasn't a priority. Plus I don't look good in tight pants. So I just decided to give it up to build the business, and I don't feel like now today that I've given up anything. I mean, I can do, pretty much what I want, but the reality is when you get focused on building the business, I have a young couple today and, he's a golf professional and he chose to put his golf clubs down for a couple of years to build a Diamond Ship. I admire that. So everybody's got little things that you can learn to put away. You certainly have to make that decision yourself. But I just can tell you this. Here's how we make decisions. Is in our situation, the way we do it is if it's not going to positively impact our family and kids and our organization and even our LOA and anything that we're part of. Board today, IBOAI is a major priority for us, obviously, is that if it's not going to impact it positively in 5 years, then we just don't do it. We have different things we do. Do we take our downtime? Yeah. I'm excited about that, but I'm still always, I love how T said, we never consider ourselves on vacation, if you will, because we're always in the game doing something. We're always communicating. May not be out showing the plan. Like, for instance, when I go to Hawaii for a month, I don't show the plan. I connect with people via our mediums that we do that with. But overall, I can do a lot of that from a hammock, right? Everybody excited about being able to swing in a hammock. And again, that's why I talked last night about don't ever underestimate the power of what you have with MMP in the system. Because you're going to get to a certain point where number one, you want different personalities that are going to feed into your group. We're honored to come in here and just give our little perspective of 27 years and things like that. And so a lot of you, and plus just you're eventually going to want to be able to, it's fun to be able to eventually, be physically gone, but yet the business still continues to roll. And that's what you have here with MMP all over the country, and the world really, which is amazing. So, the commitment, people always say, how do you stay focused? How do you stay committed? And I think that goes back to what I was just talking about. I think it's time management. And at some point in time, you have to go out, right? We talk about capacity. You probably hear that word a lot. Well, here's what happened to me. I got myself surrounded by people that had some pretty incredible capacity. I mean, I remember being around Ron some. Certainly, as I got around, OGO and Jody and Kathy and Bob and Bill and different people that, what's a good thing? Like, I never go up to Jody Victor and say I'm busy. Does everybody, you follow me? And he's one of my best friends. I mean, come on. So it's one of those things where it's interesting when you have association in your life and you have people that you can look at that are actually, running full hard and being able to do that. So I think a lot of you can accomplish a lot more than you think you can. And I think if you can manage your time, and then obviously in the evening, what I used to do when I got done treating patients, and I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. It's interesting when you hear people go, well, I'm busy. Or some of you single people think you're busy. No offense, you're confused, okay? Or you're like you're married and don't have kids yet. I get that. Okay. Or you're single and you have a cat, or something like that. So we have people that build the business with 5, 6, 7 kids. I got a friend of mine with 9 kids, which again is a small city, and you gotta, but the point is they made a decision that they were going to go out and make this a priority. I think I said last night, for your children, highly recommend when they're old enough to understand. Sit them down. Explain what mommy and daddy are doing, or if you're single mom, single dad, which is a great thing too. So whatever do, I would just highly recommend you explain it to them. And I remember years ago, I was able to coach my boys in competitive club baseball, but, when they were 12, 13, 14, had some great memories doing that. As you see, been real involved with the kids, but I don't go to every recital. There's times when, Lisha's dancing and performing, and I go to the big ones, right? The big rocks for sure. She came to me the other night and I look in the calendar and, because sometimes I might get an email needing to be somewhere, but I've tried to make that a part of it. But I remember sitting with my kids and say, look, I can be the normal dad who shows up to every single game or every single whatever, or I can go out and build you something really significant for the future. And all 3 of them looked up and go, Daddy, do whatever you got to do. And it helps that, obviously Teresa has, like I said, I think I said last night, we edify each other to our children. I was just sitting with my kids 3-4 weeks ago and I said, do you realize how many people love your mother? I said, your mom blesses people. And I try to explain, don't take that for granted. So that's a good message. I think that's a huge thing for something in the business where learning how to edify each other to the kids. I think that's a really powerful thing. So managing your time, getting folks. So people say, how do you get committed, right? Commitment's one of the things on there. I think the way you get committed is you almost box yourself in time management wise. If you tell yourself on a Tuesday night, so my time, I was trying to say earlier, when I was working, my time was 6 p.m. to about 1 a.m. And if I had to drive up and down, let's say the Front Range in Colorado, or if I was doing a house meeting or whatever it might be, and from 6 p.m. to 1 p.m., that was my time, and that's where I went. I only did it though for 2.5, 3 years. Right. And then all of a sudden, people laugh. I didn't talk about it last night, but, my close friends know I nap every day. Okay. And so people think that's funny. Okay. But I probably missed 30 days. Maybe more than that now because board week, I don't nap. I can't nap. That's okay. So, but about 2:30, I'm going, don't eat the milk, don't eat the malt balls, otherwise I'm going to go to sleep, right? There's a lot of, if you've been to the boardroom on the 8th floor, there's just candy everywhere. And then Kathy's got chocolate covered pretzels on both ends. So I don't know. It's pretty fun. And then of course, 20 buffets in a week. That'd be a great CD, by the way. So, But I nap, and I'm also up about 5:45. So, I mean, I'm up, right? A lot of times early risers get things done, but I've learned to manage my time, and I think a lot of you can really get efficient with that, okay? But my point of that is when you get free financially, what's going to happen? You're going to nap, where you drool on the pillow, wake up confused, kind of stuff. Nobody ever bothers me between like 11:30 and 1, no phone, unless God calls, I'm not home. So it's sort of fun to do that. So you're all going to go through different seasons. Some of you are going to build like we were able to build it with no kids, then little kids. I always joke, it would have been great going to Hawaii all those years. Wouldn't it be cool if they, you could put your kids in the overhead bin when they were little, poke a few holes in it, they could breathe, strap them in and, not even know they're there. So anyway, but, that's probably not legal, but you're going to go through different seasons. And, it's one of those fun seasons we're having today because, like I said, now that the kids are, 18, 17, 13, fun, and understanding what the family mission statement is, then, it's fun to get them through those seasons, right? And so a lot of you are going to navigate that. So my point is you learn to navigate busy, but your commitment's going to come by your daily habits, and I think you get that. Then, of course, right, the next steps, right, talking about putting a referral list together, I think we covered that. And again, I've always taught and been taught, put a list together of everybody their name, and everybody. And I remember Terry used to go to big rooms. I'm sure I could do it here. And he would always ask, how many people have shown the plan to everybody who's on their list or in their sphere of influence? And the answer was always 0. In other words, nobody ever raised their hand. Years ago, you heard people talk about a chicken list or whatever. Hey, look, the reality is my goal when I met somebody or I wanted to get through the people I knew and the people I, was going out and meeting as quick as I could. That's honestly how I looked at it. I was like, hey, they either want to catch up on their eggs or not, right? Remember that? And so that's how I looked at it. And again, when you start sponsoring people, they're going to know people you don't know. As far as prospecting, hey, I'm not here to teach you that. There's so many, you got some of the greatest teachers in the world, obviously Jody being the main one. And, you all know what to say. Again, for me, it was about the fact that I had connected with someone like, Terry, who was helpful to me. And so that, the concept of being out there, I mean, just figure out, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. I'm sure you've all heard that, right? And then, so I think that's important. And then obviously when you start talking about showing the plan, I know you talk about, the 15 plans over a 30-day period. And I think that's something you can strive for. Realize for some of you, if you didn't come in with a big sphere of influence, it might take you, be patient. It may take you a month or two to sort of fill that pipeline, and it's just like anything. What have you done 2 or 3 times in your life that you're good at? Nothing, right? I tell the story, some of you know, I got scouted to play professional baseball. And so my junior and senior year, I really thought I was going to go play professional baseball. I got scouted by the Braves and Orioles and Pirates, pitcher, left-handed, a little too short, okay? And, but I could bring it. I could throw it and had a couple good pitches. And I really thought I was going to go to the show. So my junior and senior year of high school, I threw a baseball every single day and never missed a day with a friend of mine. That's why Jody and I love talking about Crown Field and baseball stories. And I'm looking forward to going to an Indians game with him. Baseball's a cool sport, And that's why it was fun to coach my kids. But I had some talent, but I worked at it and therefore got efficient at it. And I think, you know what? All of you have talent. You all have something to offer people. You just got to go repeat it over and over again, right? I heard a great talk recently about just the fact that anything, go look at, major corporations, whatever it might be, major sports teams. They typically have a system just like you have here with MMP, and it's just sort of repeated over and over and over again. If you talk to Gary about when he originally built his diamond ship, he probably was very disciplined in his habits over a 3, 4, 5 year period of time. So basically it's just repeating that system over and over again. Then obviously learning how to follow up. My opinion over the years is follow-up's probably one of the weakest part of the business, because today you think about it, you'll give them like half a food bar and an excess or something. Obviously, we're talking about information that causes transformation. So you guys have some incredible digital tools. In fact, every time I see your digital tools, I'm going, man, that's cool what you guys got. But remember, information causes transformation. You can show the greatest plan in the world, but when you're sitting across from someone, you don't know what they're going home to. Maybe they just had an argument with their spouse. Maybe they got some kid things going on. They're busy. So you got to take them from that meeting to be excited about putting more information in their brain. And so that's what I would get really good at, is learning how to booking a meeting out of a meeting. I think that's got to be Amway 101. Instead of saying, hey, I'll call you, grab your calendar, book a meeting out of a meeting. And that's all been basic stuff over the years. than people skills, and you've heard all that. I'll just give you my perspective. This is what I've seen over the years. But, the one person in my life who really I've watched who has remarkable people skills is T. I mean, I don't think I know anybody who doesn't like her. They tolerate me. They love my wife, right? So, but we're a good mix, and she's taught me a lot. And I think I told the story last night. I remember we first started traveling together, building the business and doing stuff, almost 20 years ago. And all of a sudden we're sitting in the airplane seat, and she pulls out How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I remember thinking, oh boy, if she's reading that book, man, I got to stamp it on my forehead. So, but how you treat people is ultimately what's going to be the key, and the old golden rule, treat people like you want to be treated, how you make people feel. Learning how to pay people a sincere compliment, learning how to shake hands, look people in the eye, not stare through their head or break their hand, right? T mentioned smile. There's a lot of simple things that everybody can learn. And we used to work with our kids. I remember Gabriel, who today is just doing incredible. He's 17, going to graduate this year and all that in football, and you saw it last night. But I remember when he was 3 or 4, he used to sort of hide behind my leg. And I'm going, dude, what you doing? Oh, Daddy, I'm just sort of shy. And I've always said, hey, never tell your kids they're shy. Because shy means they're thinking of themselves. And I said, you're not shy. I said, get out there. And I taught him how to go out and look people in the eye and shake hands. You can tell, obviously, I know Jody, as an incredible dad, did that. You look at Steve and Joe and their people skills and their wives. I mean, you can tell. And so you can teach that to your children. Teach your children that, how to act, how to walk up and shake hands, how to, I think sometimes we don't have a kid problem. Sometimes we got a parent problem. We need parents to be able to teach their children, how to properly act, So that's just something to think about. And we've tried to work with our kids on that. And I'm sure they've had their moments too. But you're either right. I always say you're either Tigger or Eeyore. You ever been with Eeyore? Oh, no, it's going to rain today. Oh, no, that's no fun. And a lot of people today, right, the old criticize, condemn, and complain. You should eliminate that. A lot of you should try and eliminate that. Because what happens is when you do that, here, watch this. When you go out and you criticize other people in front of people, then they think that when you leave, you do the same to them. So I would be really, really careful about that. Complaining, you see a lot of people complain about stuff. I'm thinking this business, there's nothing, in my opinion, that you really should complain about. Most people aren't listening anyway, right? And the point is, from a complaining situation, what's the point? There's really not a lot of point to it. People always, the weather and this and that. You can't control the weather, right? Does that make sense? So watch that. The 3 C's that's taught all over the place in every people skill book. But again, be Tigger. Now you don't want to be like Tigger on 4 Rhodiola. Okay. That can be goofy too. But I think you can be a room changer. I think you can walk into a room and be the light. I think you can go to work tomorrow, plan A, and be the positive light in the room. Learn to look for the good in people. We've always taught the glass to us is full and overflowing, not half empty or half full. It's full and overflowing. And I just think that's something you do. You hear a lot about the power of the spoken word. There's a lot of great books out there. And I really believe that you can begin to speak prosperity in your life and speak positive in your life and speak positive association. And that's just our perspective. And that's not just the Amway business. That's just what I've learned being around association, and it's fared us well. We want to be, we've always taught our children, look, when people meet our family and they meet us or they meet mom and dad, we want people to go, wow, the Amway business is cool. I'd like to do that. Right? And so you can be the light in the room, and I want to encourage you on that. Okay. Asking people about themselves. That's one of the things I had to tweak early. I just thought everybody wanted to be, economically free, and I thought everybody wanted to do what I was doing. And then, of course, when you start sitting down with people and doing lots of meetings, and I remember people say, well, how many plans you show to go diving? I don't know. I didn't count. Didn't matter. I just remember Terry Felber telling a story. I never had any meetings done for me because I was way down in depth in a leg. But Terry opened up an organizational meeting to me, I think 1 or 2 times. And I remember going, and then, I don't even remember going, but I guess I fell asleep on the side of the wall. And somebody goes, who's that guy? And they go, oh, that's, they said my name and said he's going to be one of the next timers, because I guess I had shown the plan 53 times that month. Okay. Now, some of you guys think that's a lot, and it probably is, but it's only really 2 a day. And could you do that for 3 or 4 years, or 2 or 3 years, or 2 to 5 years, or whatever time frame it is? You can work up to that. I get that. But the reality is I just had kept the pipeline filled, and that's what happened. But one of the things I had to learn when I met with people is to, right, the old God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You've all heard that, I'm sure. By the way, I've never had an original thought yet. Everything I'm teaching you now, I've stolen from somebody else. Okay, we all have done that. Some people say, oh, I said, no, I stole it from somebody else. So, in fact, I have Jodyisms in my phone. I said to my daughter one night, I said, God forbid something happens to Daddy. I got some really cool stuff in this phone. So I've taken some Jodyisms and stuff. Sometimes we'll be sitting there talking and just, whatever. And he'll say something and I get to my phone. It's always good to put stuff in there. But learning how to ask people about themselves, right? The old how to win friends and influence people, get people talking about themselves. They fall in love with you. And that's what remembering people's name. I remember, writing it on my hand sometimes, and things like that. So whatever I needed to do to try and remember people's names, I think was key. So time, money, and mindset, that's good. And then just a few tips. I'm just going to give you some things. Like I said, you have everything laid out. The MMP awards and this is huge, guys. I remember always Jody talking about, and Kathy, recognition's free, and you guys do a great job. And by the way, next time, if I ever come back like 5-10 years from now, I want to be in the drawing, by the way. Okay, so I'd like to at least put my name in the drawing and see if I can win. That's pretty cool, man. How cool is that? That's generous. So remember, the system's critical, but here we go. A few thoughts, okay? Number one is the old concept of delayed gratification. It's something you hear. We teach it all the time. We did it ourselves. I'll give you an example. T and I, let's see, T went in 94. And some of you know, we had given that business to Matt. So the business that we built was the business that I started. We built it together, obviously, 95. I went diamond in 95. And that's the business we've taken on to Founders EDC and all that. And it's going to go to another level. We're excited about that. We got a lot of fun stuff going on. And that's great. But to us, we're having a lot of fun because we got a bunch of people going Emerald and Diamond in the next year or 2 or 3. And it's just fun. Okay. It's fun to watch. We have about 5 or 6 legs that are just popping and they're almost like on automatic pilot. I just love them, encourage them, leave them alone. And, it's when you find a leader, I just let them lead, right? I don't want to get in the way. I might mess it up. But we've taught for a long time. So we delayed our gratification. So we actually rented a place. When T and I first got together in 96, we rented a place in Colorado, little condo, townhome. And then T had her home over in Hawaii. And then we lived below our means, okay, and just kept socking money away and building our business. And in 2001, we were able to buy $2 million plus properties in the same month. Okay, one in Hawaii and one in Colorado. We've been able to decorate our homes in cash, be able to do a lot of stuff you saw up there. It's been fun to be able to do that. So we delayed our gratification. We still live below our means. We want to. We want to be able to be in that situation. And let me tell you just something. This is down the road. I know that a lot of you are new, but the reason why it's important now, it's like the boys, is they're not going into debt. So what happens is they're going to go sock some money away and do whatever they do and eventually build their business. But a lot of you should really, I think, and I know T said it, really kick around and get excited about paying off some debt. Build your business, though, while you're doing it. But learn how to pay off some debt, if you can work with that. I think it's a huge thing. Because I'll just tell you again, just from my perspective, for me, all the things I'm doing today, it's really cool when you don't have to think about the money part. Does that make sense? In other words, where you got a free mind, and so that's a good thing, and you'll eventually get there. I understand not everybody's there yet. Upline relationship. I did a talk recently that I guess came out through our system on why I embraced the mentorship and the reason I embraced it and why, quite frankly, it's been easy for me. And I'm grateful for the IBOAI and grateful for just being around. I joke about being the youngest, dumbest dude in the room, which I think is cool. Okay. And I don't know, it was the right place, right time, but I'm the 5th person on a 5-person team and I enjoy that and I say that in a very humble way. But when you're in people like Bob Andrews and Bill Hawkins and Jody and Kathy all the time, it's amazing. And I have a filing cabinet in my home with literally legal pads of every meeting I think I've been in 10 years. And I always put the date and I put the people in the room. And so I've just become a student again, right? And I think that's what a lot of you can do too. Become a student of MMP, become a student of the business. I mean, you have to have everything memorized tomorrow, but certainly let's get active. And I think another thing before I forget to say it, set a date of when you want to get active. A lot of you should say, okay, we're end of October, maybe by November 10th, I'm going to go out consistently and I'm going to meet people and things like that. But set a date, because if you don't set the date, you'll never do it. But upline relationship. Why an upline relationship? For me, again, not having a father figure, so it helped. And I've just had some really powerful people in my life, men and women. And I just, certainly not to over-edify Jody, but he's been a massive impact in my life, and he knows that, and I'm grateful for that. I mean, he's helped me so much. I mean, I've watched him in so many different ways. I've watched him in so many different environments, and I know you guys understand, but from a man-to-man situation, that's been a huge, huge relationship for me. And so I'm grateful for that. People like Brad Dunkins and Bill Hawkins and different people that I've been able to get around have really helped me because they've already walked where I'm trying to walk too, if you know what I mean. So that upline relationship gives you perspective. Right. And I think I remember my oldest asked me one time, he goes, Daddy, what do you, because I understand what you do and I understand how you do it and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, but how would you sort of sum it up? And I said, son, I feel like I wake up in the morning and I try and impact people's perspective. Right. Because every time it's a lot like when you think you're busy, sometimes you just need perspective. If you think you're really struggling financially, sometimes you need to hear somebody else's story. That's why when you listen to people's stories, right, and you can get inspired and all that kind of stuff. Being single-minded. One of my observations, my buddy Brad does an unbelievable talk on this. And the one thing that I think that I've observed over people that have built long-term businesses, 25 plus years, this is what we do. I'm not looking, we all get calls. I'm sure Jody gets tons of calls, right? And we all get calls to invest in this and do that. And I've teased as my way. I don't dabble in other things. That's just me. To be candid, to go, make an extra couple $100,000 a year doing something isn't motivating to me. I want to stay focused on what I'm doing. I've committed to the people, and things like that. And I just want to caution a lot of you, because there's a difference between a pile of money and cash flow. Does everybody understand that? Here's what I figured out about piles of money that I've watched my friends. Piles of money go away, right? Cash flow is a good thing. So, getting single-minded, make this your future. Why not? I can't think of anything that I've seen in 27 years and all that holds a candle to what this business can do if you can get right past yourself and go out, get over whatever little things that are holding you back. And there's another tip for you. Figure out what is holding you back. I remember I was taught early on, the only things that hold people back is fear. Do people have some fear? I would never speak fear over you, but the key is not being overwhelmed by fear. Okay, anything you do for the first time is a little bit fearful. I use a story when I was a physical therapist. I remember my first, I had some good doctors, and I remember they brought this guy in with a big guy, like 300 pounds, his arm. He just had surgery. They want me to move it like the day after. I think stuff's going to start squirting out of it. They do the arthroscope and all that stuff, and he wanted to punch. I was just concerned. I was fearful. I was like, and I had just gone to school for all those years. Well, now I can still do it in my sleep all these years later, but initially I just had to overcome it. So don't be overwhelmed by fear. It's okay if you have a little trepidation. The second thing is procrastination, right? That's why we're talking about time management and not procrastinating. Do it now kind of thing. And the last one is, too small of a dream or not identifying the why. And I think that's probably been crystal clear, I hope, for you this weekend. Setting a Ruby goal versus a platinum goal. I know platinum's a great accomplishment. I get that. We all teach it. But I think it takes just as much effort to go build that foundation to build a Ruby business, right? Never met a grumpy Ruby, and Rubies bring you gifts. Good. If a young couple just went, basically, hit that double premier level, and it just went Ruby a couple days ago, and they're so fired up. Okay, I think they're way down in our 9th leg. Okay, from years ago, and they're so excited. They've got money put away. They run another company, and they can start to see the ability to go get free because they're out of debt. It's a huge concept. Okay. Power of association, it's more powerful than you think, okay? If you have kids, you've seen it. I'm grateful when we took our kids from homeschool to private school about 4 years ago. One of the greatest things about that, especially the boys, is they got a chance to see what they probably didn't want to act like, if you know what I mean. Okay, I don't mean that in a critical spirit. And even there were times where I go, who's that dude? Where's he? And that kind of thing. And you know what? We're no different, right? Hang around people there's 3 types of people in your life, right? People that can help you, people that can hurt you, and then people that just land up not really mattering. Doesn't mean you don't care about them, but right? So people that can help you, and surround yourself with people that can help you, like here. Being excited about other success. I think that's a critical thing. When you have a great organization like this, and you are blessed, everybody, please understand that, okay? Is always be excited. I've always taught my kids, if you can't get excited about somebody else's success, then it's going to be a tough time being successful yourself, okay? And so it's one of those things where always be excited about other people's success. Living life through the front windshield, not the rear view mirror. Some of you probably heard that. That's a great thing as you move out of a weekend like this, for sure. And then the other thing that I think is really powerful to me, and again, we're grateful to be here. Thanks for just listening. It's good. But people come into your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And I talked about how I really don't have anybody who's originally personally sponsored who's even active. But some of those people, everybody, came into our life for a reason. Maybe they led me to other people. I remember my buddy Chen, 1995, I'm Brand New Diamond. He sat in my living room, and he came in through someone now today who's not even active in the business, but they were in the business for a reason. He came in through a season, and now he's got a huge business in China just because of one basic conversation and obviously going to China. So you never know. We love you very much. We're very honored to be here. I hope that's a prevalent. T and I, we just love your upline. We love this organization, and we're honored to be here. So take care. We'll see you soon.
This is a copyrighted program of Legacy Leadership Collective, powered by Markerman Productions, affiliated with MarkerNet Incorporated. Duplication of this program is strictly prohibited. The success depicted in this profile may reflect income from sources other than Amway, such as